Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Okay, it's Saturday night, September 21st, also Wan Prat, the Lunar Observance Day. I'm thinking we've all been working pretty hard and there's kind of a cold going around, and so for myself I'm going to give the all-night sit a miss. If anybody wants to do it, then Anumodana. But also we have a skeleton crew, so in terms of making midnight tea, that might be kind of a burden as well. So that probably after this, for myself, I'll probably meditate for about another hour after this talk, and then, but completely optional for everybody. Do as you see fit this evening. And the group, Longpa, Ajahn Krunadamo, Ajahn Sek, are Pacific Hermitage. There's the Papa, the annual Papa. So they've all gone up there. And for me, these times are really nice when the monastery is less activity, quieter, can get back to our kuti for sitting and walking meditation, or just to have some time to ourselves and take a rest or finish work or personal work that we may have set aside because we were too engaged in too many tasks with the bigger community and then neglected our own personal needs. So that can happen. So it's important to have these times where we slow down, where it's quieter. There's also a few monks, novices on retreat right now. So there's that energy that's still going. And I guess something I've been thinking about is refuge. Been thinking about that as a theme quite a bit lately. And what is refuge, and how do we cultivate refuge? How do we take refuge? How do we take refuge and then actually go into that refuge? And refuge we define as a place of safety, a place that's free of danger. And however conscious or unconscious our decision to be in the monastery might be, a monastery is supposed to be a place of sanctuary, a place of refuge where people can come and feel safe, secure. And it can also be a place where we can then point to even a deeper refuge that's even more safe and secure than any external place. That's Buddha Dhamma Sangha. We take that refuge 3 times when we take the precepts. The Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, Dhammang Saranang Gacchami, Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. And what that is actually pointing to, the Buddha gave this one really lovely teaching where it tells the bhikkhus, take refuge in Buddha, take refuge in Dhamma, take refuge in Sangha. What does this mean? This means to actually take refuge in yourself. You have to make yourself a refuge. No outside refuge is going to be completely stable. No situation, no monastery, no teacher is going to be a completely stable refuge. So in the end, ultimately we have to take refuge in ourselves. And so we build up the spiritual qualities through sila samadhi panya, that's virtue, meditation, discernment. We build up our parami, our spiritual qualities, so that we can make a refuge unto ourselves and have a sense of safety within ourselves. That's of the ultimate importance. So the Buddha says, make a refuge unto yourself, make the Dhamma your refuge inside of yourself. What things do we normally take refuge in? So these are habits. We have certain unwholesome habits and tendencies that we tend to take refuge in, and the Buddha said those aren't a stable refuge. Those aren't a helpful refuge. Those things we normally take refuge in are desire, anger, delusion. Something like anger, it might give us a temporary feeling of power or safety, or that we might, especially righteous anger, we might feel like we're perhaps doing something helpful. It's not a refuge. It's not a stable refuge, not a secure refuge. It'll come back and burn us in the end. It'll bite us in the end. The Buddha called anger, he said it's sweet for a moment, but its root is poisonous. So how do we do that? How do we make a refuge unto ourselves? Just something Luang Cha would teach would be to just have that sense of looking after ourselves. We can't really look after anything else other than ourselves. Changing, trying to make ourselves have more of a sense of well-being through changing others around us, changing the world, we're going to end up exhausted. And so we look after ourselves, we change ourselves, we train ourselves. There can be ripple out benefits from doing that. We look after ourselves by not buying into the anger when it arises. We look after ourselves by calling into question the greed and the desire, which, if indulged in, might be harmful to us or harmful to somebody else. We look after ourselves through calling into question the various delusions that arise. And delusion is, we get the question a lot, well, what is delusion? How do I identify delusion? And delusion, largely, its function is to create identification. Delusion's function is to create identification. So we invest in a mental state, say anger, and then our delusion impels us to identify with it. I am an angry person. Or I identify with this particular issue or this way of being or this personality. So that's delusion. And it's not to say that everything we think or feel or every mood that we have is unwholesome. There's also wholesome intentions, wholesome kamma, or I'll use the more common word karma. The Sanskrit word is karma, the Pali word is kamma. So the karma, the intention, the Buddha said karma is intention. Our intentions can be wholesome as well. Now, basic Buddhism, basic right view, it's good to also know, and something that can help us to not be too hard on ourselves as we undertake the mind training and the practice, is knowing that the anger itself, the greed itself, the delusion itself arising, that itself is not the defilement, so we don't need to be telling ourselves like, oh, I had the anger arose again and I didn't. I'm such a angry person, or I'm such a greedy person, I'm such a deluded person, I'm such a defiled person. The real defilement is the attachment to the anger, the attachment to the greed, the attachment and clinging to the delusion, to the thing we're telling ourselves, which is causing us to go on a wayward path. The defilement is believing in the anger, believing in the greed, believing in the delusion. The defilement is investing in the anger, investing in the greed, investing in the delusion. The practice, the wholesome intention, is mindfulness. So if, say, a mood of anger, a mood of wanting, longing, something like that arises in the mind, then if we have the practice, the mind training to help us, then we call it into question, we don't act on it. So that's what we call sila, the virtue, when we don't act on it. So that's already a huge, momentous step. That means we're practicing. We don't act on it, we don't take refuge in it. And so then the momentum of that habit starts to weaken, starts to slow down, and we start to become healthy. We start to become spiritually healthy. We start to sober up a bit. So that's the beginning of true refuge. That's the awareness, mindfulness and awareness. Seeing with mindfulness and awareness. And mindfulness, sati, that actually goes together with kindness and compassion as well. Those states almost seem to arise in a very natural way when there's mindfulness. If we have, say, a mood of anger arise and we give rise to mindfulness due to our training that we've already engaged in, and it's become more habitual, so anger arises and we can call it into question, not act on it, and starts to lose its power. Uh, the anger can't really coexist with the mindfulness. So as the mindfulness gets stronger, those things, those unwholesome emotions aren't going to arise so much. Or if they do, it's just going to be very, very fleeting. When the Buddha talks about the 5 hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, doubt, he says that when our mind is caught in any of those 5 hindrances, they weaken our wisdom. And so we don't really, because we're lost in these hindrances, we're caught in the net of the hindrances, anger, ill will, being one of those hindrances. We're caught by it, and then we can't really see which direction to go. It's not very clear. The Buddha said, like strong sensual desire, sensual craving, specifically unwholesome craving, that's like your mind is like water, and that's like water with, your mind becomes like water with dye in it. It's dyed color, so you can't see through it. It's not clear. With anger, ill will, the mind is like boiling water. So it's boiling and bubbling. We can't see down into it clearly. With sloth and torpor, the mind is like water with like pond plants, pond scum on it. So it's just murky. You can't really see into it. Restlessness is like the mind with wind blowing on it. So there's ripples, there's waves. Can't really see down into the mind, into the water very clearly. Doubt is like, the Buddha gives a dual analogy for doubt. Doubt is like muddy water in the dark. So you can't see it. Even if it's muddy, you wouldn't be able to see it, but it's in the dark, so you really can't see anything. You're caught by the doubt. So these 5 hindrances, they weaken our discernment, weaken our wisdom. So if we're free from those hindrances, we see a clear path, see a way forward, see how to respond skillfully to situations. Having mindfulness doesn't mean we don't respond to situations. It means we look and see what's going to be of benefit, what's going to be of benefit to ourselves and of benefit to others. And for now, we can just focus on the benefit to ourselves. It's like the sutta of the 2 acrobats doing their stick acrobatics. In ancient India, and modern India actually, you'll see some amazing things from time to time. Magic and acrobatics. So there's these 2 acrobats, and the senior or the elder acrobat is speaking with the apprentice, the junior acrobat, and the senior says, I'm going to hold this pole on my head. You're going to climb up the pole, and you're going to stand on your head on that pole. So that's like their trick, these pole acrobatics. And he says, I'll look after you, and you look after me, and thereby we won't fall apart, and we'll succeed in our stick acrobatics. And the junior says, no, I think that's actually not correct. You look after yourself, and I'll climb up that pole, and I'll look after myself, and thereby we'll be okay. We won't fall apart. And the Buddha praises the junior acrobat in that case. He says, looking after yourself, you look after others. Because however we're doing, there's going to be this ripple out effect. It's going to have an effect on others. There's something about the practice too, it's important to be super forgiving with ourselves. We do want to be somewhat stern and strict in the mind training because the mind is hard to train, and otherwise it's not going to change, it's not going to come out of its old habits. At the same time, we have to be really forgiving with ourselves, knowing that these things take a long time. And knowing that sometimes the mind might fall back into its old habits, fall back into its old ways, to be able to pick ourselves back up again. I like to use the analogy sometimes of sharpening, like sharpening a blade. We can use that image, use that analogy to think about how we can train our minds. And a lot of the time there's going to be a desire to get really far quickly. So if you want to get a blade very, very sharp, you have a number of different sharpening stones of different coarse, medium, fine, refined, super fine, ultra fine. You have these different sharpening stones. And the tendency, you say you have a blade that's got like little divots in the blade, it doesn't cut very well, it's not sharp, it's very dull, but I want it to be extremely sharp, so I take that final sharpening stone, the finest sharpening stone, and work away at it. So might work away at it for even 1 hour or 2 hours. Go and try to cut something, it's just as dull as before. So why is that? It's because the blade has divots in it, it's completely dull. In my impatience, I've gone to the final sharpening stone, wanting to make it really, really sharp, thinking, okay, maybe it's a shortcut, I can take a shortcut, I don't need all these other stones, I can skip over to the final one and do it, and it doesn't work. Okay. So what I actually have to do to get that knife sharp is start with the coarsest stone, set the bevel, grind off all the divot marks, take the time to do that, be really attentive to it. But then I might get impatient again, move up too quickly, move up the stones too quickly, up the refinement too quickly. So I think, okay, good enough. I set the bevel, and I've gone to the next stone, just kind of done that kind of quickly, move up. Okay, it's a tiny bit sharper than it was, but it's still pretty dull. So again, no shortcuts, go back. Okay, here's what I have to do. Sharpen that blade, take a close look at the edge, analyze the edge until the scratches from the previous stone are all gone. It takes quite a bit longer. Move up to the next sharpening stone, say the medium, work on that, analyze the blade. Okay, the scratches are gone from the previous stone. Move up. As the stones get more refined, it takes longer on each one. This is how sharpening works. It takes much longer then, once you get up to the more refined sharpening stones. Say if you're going between refined and super refined, it's going to take quite a long time to get those marks gone, and practice is very much like this. Setting the bevel, using that coarse stone, that's very much like the precepts, having to take on the precepts and just basic restraint, not acting on the things we used to act on that are not bringing benefit to ourselves and others, actually bringing harm to ourselves and others, things like acting on anger. If we skip that first stone and we don't set the bevel and we take our rutted out dull knife and try to take it to the ultimate refinement at first, that's like thinking that we can take on the meditation practice and that we want to get the deep meditation, we want to get the absorptions, but sila is not necessary, the virtue is not necessary, precepts aren't necessary. We do that, what we're going to end up with is a knife that's still extremely dull but has some little polished kind of marks on the side of it. Very much the same, the training of the mind. So, okay, let's go back. Work on the sila, work on those precepts. Remold our behavior into something which is going to be able to actually cut through delusion. Set our own bevel, so to speak, so that we have a chance to cut through our own defilements, our own delusion. But it's like, okay, we've got it. We've got the precepts. But then the meditation, we might get a bit greedy about that and want the meditation to be super refined quickly. So, okay, I'm just going to put forth a lot of effort really fast. I'm going to meditate 10 hours a day. I'm just going to put all the effort into it. I'm going to get really refined really quickly. And having put forth that really intensive effort, then I'll get enlightened, or I'll get jhana or whatever, and then my life will be easy after that. And I won't have to put forth that kind of effort anymore. So we do that, and then kind of wear ourselves out or tie ourselves up in knots. So, okay, knife still isn't sharp. Got to go back, take it step by step, work away at the lower stones till the marks from the previous stone are gone. So that's just taking the practice step by step. Sitting meditation, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Walking meditation, 30 minutes. Working up. Our body is adjusting, our mind is adjusting. 45 minutes, 1 hour. Going back and attending to the precepts. Working on things like generosity, giving. Things like training the mind in stages, how to let go. Coming back to the meditation, meditating every day, half an hour a day, 45 minutes a day, 1 hour a day, slowly working up incrementally, getting the mind to become a bit more bright and luminous. Reading Dhamma, studying the suttas, thinking about the Dhamma. That's Dhamma Vichaya. That's one of the factors of enlightenment, is actually just thinking about Dhamma all the time. Dhamma Vichaya. Coming back to the meditation. Making it sustainable, even enjoyable. That's how the practice is going to progress. If we're coming back to the analogy of sharpening a knife, if we're sharpening and we're just trying to get that final goal of an extremely razor-sharp knife, it takes a long time. So if we don't make the process of sharpening enjoyable, it's doubtful we're going to come back to it and do it again. So actually enjoying the process and investigating the process. How is the mind actually getting trained? When I don't act on anger, is the mind actually happier and more at ease? We find it is. When the defilements start to cool down a little bit and we don't feel a sense of longing or lack or need all the time. The mind starts to cool down. How is that? Is it better than before? When we're convinced that it is better than before, then we give rise to a state called saddha, or faith. Faith starts to arise. From faith comes effort. We put more effort into the practice. The more effort we put through, the more mindfulness we have. And then these qualities circle around each other. So it gets good. It gets really good. This is desirable. But the mental habits are strong, so they come back. They fight back. The delusion fights back. No, it's right to have righteous anger. It's good. I need this. This is part of my being. So then the mindfulness has to rise up to that as well. This is for us as monastics, but for lay people, for everybody. Everybody needs this. Everybody needs this mindfulness. We change ourselves in this way, it's guaranteed that the world will be a better place if we can change ourselves like this. At least our world will be a better place. Our inner world will be a better place, and then the people we're surrounded with will be like-minded people. So our immediate surroundings will be a better world, a better place. If we keep cultivating these qualities, got that ripple out effect happening. So it's not so much coming up in my mind this evening, but these are just a few thoughts about cultivating refuge. If we cultivate these things, that's how we strengthen our inner refuge. So whether it's the calling into question the defilements, cultivating the mindfulness and awareness, starting to take refuge in the mindfulness and the awareness rather than the unwholesome moods and emotions that are going to do harm to ourselves and others. Cultivating that inner refuge, focusing on dhammas, lists of dhammas like the 5 hindrances, doing what we can to knowing that it takes time to incrementally train the mind and practice. How mindfulness can actually help to give rise to more of a sense of natural kindness and compassion for ourselves and others. When we start to get a sense of ease and well-being through the practice, then faith in the practice starts to arise and goes from there. So these are just a few brief thoughts for this evening, and I'll leave it there.